what if I kept doing this? Like, what if I stuck with this for a month and did it every day?
We're lagging on emotional intelligence.
He won't know. He won't recognize, oh, I'm getting frustrated right now. That saved my marriage.
Dean, what is going on, man? Welcome to Dad Edge. It's good to have you, bro.
Hey, Larry, thanks for having me. I'm excited. Been waiting for this for a while. So yeah.
Me too. And I just realized I gave you like a brah, like a brah. I didn't even mean it. I was like,
Bruh,
bro. And I was like, brah. But
maybe maybe you've been watching some UK shows recently. Bruh.
brah, brah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Man, it's good to have you here. So, you've got two kids. You've got a daughter, you got a boy,
I do.
4 and 18 months. So like you're in the heat of it.
Yeah, I am in it. I am in the high maintenance period, it would seem.
How long you been married?
5 years.
Awesome. Okay. How'd y'all meet? How'd you and your wife meet?
We met at a bar on Sunday Fun Day. Um,
Really?
yes, I was doing my normal laps. I like doing laps when I was younger. Of course, I was never brave enough to actually approach anybody when I was doing laps. I just walked around and then came back to my friends and I was like, "Oh yeah, there's like a cute girl over there. I won't talk to her." But I actually
Wait.
stopped and
So
talked to
wait, laps. Like tell me about
laps.
laps. What
Like
are
at the
laps?
bar,
Okay,
you've
bar.
never. No, like when you're at the bar, right? You go, I'm gonna go
Yeah.
do a lap, right? So you
Yeah.
just you go see who's in the bar,
Yeah.
right? And so I rarely actually stopped and talked to girls as I did that.
Yeah.
But my future wife, when I met her, I stopped. I actually stopped and I looked at her and we locked eyes and I approached her and we talked for 2 hours and for pretty much nonstop. And yeah, a few years later, got married and had two kids, and now we're yeah, going through that process of, oh, I have kids now. Okay, our relationship's not the same. And now we've done couples counseling, which was fantastic, and now we're taking more steps to invest in our relationship, not just our relationship with the kids. And so yeah, it's something that I think about a lot, and I might be helpful to guys who are listening to this, thinking about how to improve their own marriage while balancing, their roles as dads. But
I'm curious. What was your opening line after and how many laps? How many
oh,
laps
I
did
did
you do?
one,
One.
and I
Okay.
said, "Your eyes are gorgeous."
And how did she respond?
Uh, well, I don't know. She looked at me. I mean, she looked back at me and said, "Thanks, you too," something like that. And then yeah, she just listened to me. I just talked. This is back when I could talk about myself for hours and hours and not get bored with it. So she just sat there and looked at me, and I just talked and talked, and yeah, I don't
She
know.
just
Guess it
listened.
was
Okay.
interesting enough. So,
And then what, how did you know? When did you know that she was the one?
oh, that's a good question. I feel like part of me thought it as soon as I met her. But I think it probably happened I think it was when we were going through like that initial stage of our relationship where we had gotten past the honeymoon phase, but we were working through all of these lack of trust issues, and just going through all of that and, wondering, why am I doing this, and not being able to come up with a really good answer. More so just like I feel connected with this person and she's special, and I want to do it. I think that was my realization period, going through like the uncomfortable part of the relationship and then realizing, okay, I'm still here and she's still here. So like there must be a reason, even if we can't explain it, like there must be a reason why we're still here, like trying to make this work.
That's really cool. Like, what was so you guys you mentioned you've been through couples counseling. You've been together for 5 years. I find that really, really cool. I
Hmm.
find it really fascinating too, because normally couples that early on are just like, nah, we're
Mm.
good.
Well, I mean, we met up. We started dating in 2014. Um, and then we got married in 2019, and we started couples counseling in 2021 or 2022. So, yeah, I think it was, there are a lot of difficulties that led to us um, benefiting from that. But, we had a kid during the pandemic. Her mom passed away in 2018, and so there were still a lot of grief issues there. And just having kids, all of a sudden, all of the differences in your philosophies of both parenting and life become much more apparent, and there's much more friction, and we just didn't have the conversation tools, I think, to be able to talk about them in a way that both of us felt heard and recognized. And so um, yeah, we just and then also just having kids in general, like me dealing with that lack of attention that I wasn't getting, that was tough. I also didn't have this pattern of hanging out with guy friends a lot. So, if you think about it from that perspective, okay, if I'm only getting my attention from my wife and I'm not getting it from hanging out with other people, now I've got the situation where all of her attention is going to the kids and I'm not making up for that attention anywhere else. So I'm angry because I'm not getting attention, but I also feel bad because, she's watching the kids. I shouldn't be mad at her for not giving me attention. So, yeah, being able to learn how to articulate all of those emotions and both of us being open to hearing it and, reflecting back on what we've heard rather than taking it personally and trying to fix it. Yeah, it took some time to figure that out.
What were some of the, so you mentioned you learned some conversational skills, and it sounds like what you did was is you might have even learned how to maybe like listen and reflect and articulate better for each other.
Yeah. Hmm.
Another thing too is I'm really keen on just asking about hanging out with more guy friends, right? Because I agree with you. And
Mm.
if you ask most women, like they will tell you, I do not want to be the end all be all friend for my husband. He's got to have
Mm.
other relationships, especially with other really good men that are really, really important versus I'm the sunrise and the sunset of every relationship in this man's life. That's a lot of pressure. But what were some of the conversational skills that you guys learned through marriage counseling that were really, really beneficial to your relationship?
There's one in particular that I think is just the foundation of having a healthy conversation. And it's just being able to have the safety for you to express your emotions and express your thoughts and your feelings, and for them to be able to not defend it or not attack it or not defend themselves, but just to say, okay, so what I'm hearing is you're frustrated about this and you feel like this. And just being able to do that back and forth, because you don't need a resolution necessarily. It's more about making sure that your feelings are heard. And for me, I thought that there had to be a resolution. So I was really scared to bring up things that I felt could not have a resolution be found for. But going through that practice and just recognizing, oh, I don't have to have a solution for this. So, like, if we disagree about something and we just voice our opinions and our feelings on it, but don't actually come up with like a solution, just the expression of the feelings is a lot of the time the solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus like holding them in, harboring them, maybe even like resenting the other person because it's like, man, I can't even talk to this other person about this thing. Like, but being able
Yeah.
to create space is what it sounds like, right?
Yeah, I mean, right? Content,
Yeah.
resentment. Oh my gosh. I mean, those are things that are so easily um, bred when you aren't expressing those emotions. And I think a lot of that goes back to, the idea of what does it mean to be a good husband in a marriage? And, I think even whether we believe this or not, subconsciously, I think our belief is that, okay, like the woman's going to complain, right? And our job is to be able to take it. Except my version of taking it was just like biting my tongue and, just like trying not to lose my cool as she said things. There wasn't any sort of, hey, I want to feel like I'm listened to as well.
Right.
And it wasn't until we started doing that back and forth, and this is something I'm still working on, but this idea of me being able to be a container for her emotions, like her being able to take it to level 10 and for me to be able to just kind of sit there and say, yeah, that's really frustrating, but not go there with her, but just be able to be like,
Yeah.
I want to be a safe place for your extreme emotions. And I really struggled with that. And I grew up with a family that did not
Yeah. Yeah.
did not condone
Right.
emotions. So, you can't allow other you can't tolerate those emotions in other people until you can tolerate them in yourself. So that was on, total display in those
Yeah.
interactions.
Talk to me about what it is. What does it feel like when you're brand new to this? And I love what you're talking about because like, man, this is my jam. Like everything you're talking about, relationship dynamics, conversational excellence, creating psychological safety. Let's talk about,
Mm.
how to create that container. I love that word too for my wife without necessarily getting wrapped up in her emotions. Why do you think it's so hard for us guys not to be overwhelmed by the emotions that are coming at us with our wives and kids? Because I think if you peel back the onion layers of some of the things that we're talking about here, men just in general, we have a hard time with big emotions coming at us, right?
Hmm.
It's like, what do I do with these? So I'm curious, what's your perspective on that? Like before you started doing this work and even after doing this work, like as it relates to like big emotions coming your way.
Mm. I mean, so I think before I would have said something along the lines of, I think it's hard for us to experience emotions because we feel like we have to solve it. But after going through a lot of the changes and a lot of the work that I've done with, cognitive behavioral therapy for the last, I don't know, 8 years, and journaling and meditation and reading all these books, I would say now that it's because I never developed this feeling of safety with my own emotions with people around me, so that, like, if I can't do that with myself, I'm not going to be able to do that with her or with anybody else. So I just am so used to not being able to validate my own emotions that subconsciously, there's something in me that says, well, you know, if you can't experience those emotions, why should you let other people experience those emotions? So I think men do have, we know the nail in the forehead story, and you got a nail in your forehead. Let me take it
Right.
out. No, I just
Yeah.
want to talk about it. But I think more so it's that men are allowed to have one emotion, anger, and because that is the range of our emotional, you know, acceptable emotional expression, it just leaves us unable to tolerate other people's emotions as well.
And anger is a secondary emotion. And yeah, there's a lot of guys I think that really deal with like, how do I deal with this anger? And it's usually we feel sad,
Mm,
we could feel depressed, we could feel overwhelmed, we could feel exhausted, we could feel fear. That's a big one, for anger.
mm,
Because we get mad at ourselves, even like it's like I'm angry at this situation. I'm even angry at myself for feeling fear. Like, what the hell's wrong with me? And then we lash, right?
mm,
A little
yeah.
bit. But why do you think that men, I mean, let's just say it for what it is. I think we're lagging on emotional intelligence as
Hmm.
it relates to ourselves because we don't even understand why we feel the things we do. And then we have
Mm.
to deal with other people's big emotions, like our wives and our kids. But what do you think is the missing piece there?
Unrealistically high expectations and the shame that goes with it.
That's good. Yeah.
Just like for me, sadness is one that's, for me, I'm just like, I crave experiencing sadness just because just because I've repressed it so much. But also, I have this deep inability to feel shame and be comfortable in that feeling. So like when there's something happens at home where it's, like for example, last night I made dinner and I added too much seasoning and my kids don't like spicy foods. So I added too much pepper and salt and I was eating it and I was like, "Oh, this is too spicy." And but part of me didn't want to admit it because I was like, I don't want to feel that shame of knowing that I cooked. Because if my wife says, like, "Ah, I wish this was like less spicy," because that for me would have triggered that feeling of shame and just this deep discomfort, this inability to feel it and feel secure. And I think. part of that shame being the fear of abandonment. So I don't want to feel shame, because if I feel shame, then that makes me feel open to this idea that, oh, like people don't like me, or like I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. That's the other one. That's a big one. And then that would lead to, this feeling of this fear of abandonment, which, and then my response is to use anger to lash out against that. And, I'm going to fix it with being angry, because people stop and listen to me when I'm angry. So, yeah, now if only like I could somehow internalize all of the logical understandings of myself, and make it just, just make it automatic in my emotional behavior as well. That's
Yeah.
the next trip. So,
I like that.
uh,
It's interesting. I've heard this before from just other people, and it's when big emotions come at us from for the most part, right? Guys, we're confronted with like, what do I do with this energy? This is a lot coming at me. Like, how do I
mm,
absorb this, right? Because it's one of the actually the one of the hardest things. Like your 4-year-old is having a freaking meltdown.
mhm,
And there's a part of us that's just like, oh my God, just seriously, just give me a second to even think of what to do here, right? So
yeah,
you're dealing with your own emotional reactions to this, like these big emotions, or your wife, who's like, she might be just venting about something, right? It's just something that she's
yeah,
irritated with, or, and again, doesn't want you to solve it, but just sharing it with you. And it's like our immediate knee jerk reaction is to be like, I don't know what to do with this emotion, and I need to take away the pain here and figure this out. So like, what are the band-aids here, right? Like, how do I just solve this super fast, right?
mm,
And because there's a part of us that just doesn't know how to deal with it, so we want to just deal with it as quickly as we can and just move on.
yeah.
But I'm curious, just in your own relationship and even with your kids and stuff like that, have you? I know I've experienced that big time. And has that been your experience, like premarital counseling?
Yeah. I mean, I think the experience has been, oh, this is really uncomfortable. And then just feeling overwhelmed, and then just, you know, doing the thing that's going to get me out of that. So, usually my weapons there would be, let me convince you that your feelings are wrong, which, that never works. Um,
That only
or it's,
works never.
it only works never, right? But that's like our default thing, is like, well, let me tell you why your feelings are wrong.
Right.
Um, but then the other, it would be the problem solving, right? It would be, I'm so frustrated with work, and I'm like, quit your job. Okay, let's move on. Move on from the conversation. Like that's where it goes to that.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, for me, it's just this feeling of overwhelm, and usually there's like a little bit of, with the kids in particular, it's Declan's, my son's name is Declan, so he's mad that he can't put his shirt on or something, or he's just getting frustrated putting his arm through the armhole. And so, my first response is, okay, I've read all these books, I've done all this meditation, all this work on myself. So, oh, you're trying to get your shirt on. Okay. Well, let's keep trying. And then eventually, you just run out of willpower, and you're like, just put your shirt on, dude. Come on. You're 4. You know how to do this.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
just, eventually you run out of willpower, which, I've thought about, I work in fitness. So like a lot of my thoughts go to willpower. And the reality is, like, you're already using your willpower. You've got all these other things going on in life. So the amount of willpower that you truly have left over is so small. So, you're going to run out relatively quickly in any day-to-day situation. So, ideally, you'd be able to sit there and be patient, but at some point, you're just like, I don't have anything left. I have no
Hmm.
patience left. I can't do it.
I think you really struck a chord there. I think us dealing with big emotions or our situation, it does deal with like our own patience and our own willpower. It's like, okay, like, can we just move on already? Like, just let's just get to the next thing. But
Mm,
I'll tell you, man, like I see a lot of these disturbing things just, out in public, right? Where like I was in a hockey store yesterday to get my kid's skates sharpened because he's 8 and he's doing AU hockey.
mm,
And this dad, man, like this one kid, he did something wrong in the store. I don't know what it was, but this dad just like lost it, like like f bombs, and like this kid was like 10, and like he was just it was like f bombs, like dude, I'm gonna beat your effing ass. Like, what the F are you doing? Like, I can't remember what the kid did. I mean, maybe in a weird way, he deserved it. Like, I have no idea. Like, maybe he was shoplifting something. I don't know. I don't think he was doing that, but I think he was just annoying his dad. But his dad just was like, boom, like over the top, like with a lot of things. I know I've been there myself. But what have you found? I know that one of your main thing in fitness is yoga, right? Which I know that
Right.
there's a spiritual side of it. I know you don't really do that, but I also know that I've done yoga enough myself. I haven't done it a ton, but you have to be insanely patient with yourself. Like you
Mm-hmm.
actually, it's so much harder than what it actually looks like from like a bystander's point of view. But like your
Yeah.
balance, your breathing, your patience with yourself, the thoughts that are coming in, and you're just like trying to like stay calm and focus on one thing.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like how has yoga really helped you in that space of wanting to maybe react to something
Mm-hmm.
versus like I'm going to respond with calm and patience?
I mean, you notice it that day, honestly. Like if you do yoga in the morning, um, you are more patient during the day. It doesn't matter if you've been doing it for like years or if you've been doing it for like a month, but you notice that you're more patient. And the reason why that is because of that emphasis on the breathing. So in yoga, you are constantly focusing and refocusing on the breathing. And you lose focus and you're like, oh, I look so stupid during this pose right now. And then you go back to, oh, I'm focusing on my breathing. Got to focus on my breathing. And the more that you practice that, the more that you develop this sense of presence in the sense of being present that allows you to be in those situations where you're like, okay, I can feel myself getting frustrated right now. Right. So, but the guy who doesn't practice mindfulness and doesn't practice being present, he won't know. He won't recognize, oh, I'm getting frustrated right now. He'll jump straight to yelling because he doesn't have that awareness. So what yoga has done for me has just being in the poses and holding them for a longer time, focusing on the little things in your body, like, okay, how do I tweak this pose so that I target this right muscle? Or how do I use my breathing to go a little bit deeper? And, oh, I'm losing my focus. Let me check in on my breathing. And so it's that intense focus on your breathing, the body awareness, and being able to use that to stay in the pose a little bit longer, even when you start to lose your patience and be frustrated. And that has a direct translation into every other aspect of your life. What you do when you're practicing yoga goes into how you parent, goes into how, how you behave as a husband, how you behave in your work. So it's tremendously helpful, and it is that unique focus on breathing and body awareness that you don't get from other workouts.
Is there a lever that you will pull at first, like to get that patience sort of, those dominoes to fall? Like, is it like, let's just say your wife says something that's triggering, or your kids do
Hmm.
something that's triggering, or like even in your business, something is triggering, right? And there's a part of you that just wants to react to it. And
Hmm.
then you follow some steps to calm yourself down. And I'm curious, what is that first lever that you pull that maybe is in relation to some of your yoga practice?
Breathing,
Breathing. Okay.
just
What kind of
breathing.
breathing?
Hand on your heart, in through your nose, out through your nose or through your mouth. Just hand on your heart, big breath in, big breath out. And this reminds me of I think it's a Thomas Jefferson quote, but it's like, when mad, take 10 breaths. If extremely mad, take 100. And yeah, it's breathing. It's just the first line of defense is remembering when you're having a big emotion, I can breathe and I can buy myself some time between feeling that strong emotion and what action I take as a result of it. The
Interesting.
breathing is just like, and the more that you practice that breathing, the easier it is to do that breathe, the easier it is to call upon that breathing in those stressful situations. My problem is that I thought that breathing was the solution. So whenever I got mad, I was just like, oh, I just need to breathe more. I just need to breathe more without actually without actually addressing the underlying causes and the things that I wasn't saying and the situations that I could have had, I could have had more agency in. But breathing is the first step to being able to recognize that you do not have to do what your emotions say.
So when your kids or wife sees you like with your hand on your chest breathing, are they like, oh, I might have struck a chord? Or
Yeah.
do you do that like in front of them, or do you do it more sly, like on the down low?
I sense it with my kids.
Okay.
So like if I'm putting my kids to sleep and they notice that I take a big breath, they get a little upset because they're like, "Oh crap, dad's like getting mad." So,
Really? So they'll
yeah.
sense it, they'll see it.
Right, right. So they know. My kids know. I don't know if my wife will know as well because she'll say like, "What's that sigh for?" Or something like that. And I'm like, well, the sigh is for an alternative to what was going to happen instead, which nobody wants, right? Because I don't want that. You don't want that. You don't want me yelling. So like the sigh is a good thing. Um, but I can say with absolute certainty that the ability to control myself when you have that just flash of red anger and you feel like someone's like poured like hot water over your head and your shoulders and your neck, just that rush of anger, of rage, the ability to like pause there and say like I need to get myself out of this situation, like that's saved my marriage.
I could
Yeah.
see that. I'm thinking of like just a lot of guys, me included, that knowing what you just said and a reaction that I otherwise regret, that probably would have been my saving grace. So
Mm.
yeah, I love that, man. You mentioned I want to go back to your childhood. I know we kind of like we're talking about a lot of the current things. Um, it sounds like you kind of maybe were raised like sort of the same way as I was, which is like,
Success
hey,
focused.
he's success focused, achievement focused.
Yeah.
Hey, just so you know, like your uh your big emotions are not necessarily welcome here, especially if
Yeah.
you're a man, right?
Mm.
So talk to me. I mean, I'm not saying that everything was all bad, but like, I mean, those that was just some of the messaging growing up. But like, just the relationship you have with your own dad. What is that? What was that like growing up? What's it like now?
Yeah. Well, first I want to say that, yeah, I think that the big part was not being able to have those emotions. I have vivid memories of my dad telling me to shape up. That was what
Shape
he
up.
did. Shape
Wait,
up.
just
Like,
out of curiosity, what do you? How did you take that? Like, what did shape up mean to you?
shape up meant shut down. Shape up meant
Okay.
shut down, shut up what you're feeling, and just get through the situation. So, yeah, just I spent a lot of yeah, just a lot of time like just in that. Okay, we're gonna repress this emotion. Um, Anger is bad. That's something that I realized. I had an experience a few years ago where I realized that I was so ashamed of my anger that, um, it was preventing me from. It was weird because anger was so accessible for me because if something happened, it would just take me over the edge and I would go straight to like yelling or mad. But at the same time, I was also deeply ashamed of my anger to the point that um, I didn't want to feel it at all. So it was this very weird relationship with anger. Um, but going back to my relationship with my dad wasn't there a lot. He's a doctor. He's still a doctor. He's retiring this year. But he woke up at 4:30. He was gone. Um, by the time I woke up, I think he left at like something stupid early, like I don't know, maybe even 4:45. He was gone so early, and then he would come home at 6:30. Um, and that's what I remember. Just him, just not really there. So, I think as we got, as I think back on certain things, like I remember that he took a week off from work to go on a ski trip with me when I was 10. And at the time I didn't realize like, oh, dad's taking a week off. But now I look back and I'm like, holy crap, my dad took a whole week off of work to go on a ski trip with me. just me, not with my mom, not with my younger brother, but just me. Um, and then, I also think back to, well, dad took off, he would take off one morning a week to be with us in the morning. So he would stand at the kitchen island with his laptop and he would work from there. Um, and sometimes he would also pick me up from soccer practice or pick me up from one appointment, take me to soccer practice, and we get like chicken nuggets. So I have, little memories that I have of regular activities that I did with him, um, where he, he made the effort and he showed up. Um, but I also don't really remember him giving
Sorry about
me
that.
it. Oh, what happened?
You didn't hear my dog?
No, did they
Oh,
fart?
good. No, no, he just barked like a maniac for
Oh,
a second. So I apologize if that
no,
distracted you, mate.
you have a solid microphone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, no, it's very non-omnidirectional. So yeah. Um, but yeah, I just so he showed up, but like I don't remember him ever really giving me advice. Um, and over the last few years, we've definitely moved in a better direction in terms of us connecting and me recognizing that he didn't have, a great relationship with his dad, and that, his dad, I don't know I don't know to what extent I want to share, just because it's not my history, but I don't think he had a great relationship with his dad. And I think his dad just told him what to do all the time. And so I think he resolved to say, like, I'm never going to tell my son what to do. I'm going to let him figure things out for himself. Um, but the flip side of that is that, like, I'd like to have some advice. I'd like to have someone to tell me, hey, like, I'm going to help shape you into, you know, I'm going to help shape you. I'm going to help teach you like what it means to. I don't know if it was so important to I don't know if it was so important to be taught, here's what it means to be a man, but maybe even just like, here's what it means to be a decent human being, you know? And I didn't really, aside from maybe some indirect teaching, there was never really a lot of direct teaching. And, um, so yeah, there's definitely like I definitely feel like, I missed out on a lot of that. And, I haven't really I haven't really been able to really fully experience that sadness because it's more so I'm able to justify it, right? I'm able to say like, well, he was working. He had a really important job. He's an oncologist. He saves people's lives. So, he was doing really important work. But yeah, I didn't see him as much as I wanted to. And I think he knows that. He's a very present grandfather. Like we see him 2 or 3 times a year, and they'll actually watch the kids. So Marissa and I can go, take a vacation somewhere. Um, so that's really nice. But uh, but yeah, not as much dad as I would have liked to have had.
How old are you?
35,
35. Yeah. So I'm a little ahead of you in age. I'm 49.
49.
And my dad is 76, and my dad we have a very interesting relationship to say the least. So he
Hmm.
was married to my mom for I think 4 or 5 years. I came
Okay.
along, and then they got divorced when I was like 9 months old. My dad was
Wow.
gone, uh, left my life, signed over parental rights to another man.
Wow.
I ran into him once when I was 12, and we had a very short relationship for about 6 months, and then we parted ways again. And then I ran into him as a fluke in a Starbucks and when I was 30, so 19 years ago. And still to this day, my dad's adopted, and my dad came from a really tough childhood. And as much as some of the things and the decisions that my dad has made with me has been hurtful, at almost 50 years old, I'm much more graceful and forgiving because I know my own stuff that I've done wrong.
Yeah.
And it's not for lack of wanting to do my best. It was for the lack of like I just didn't know the information. And now I do. And I think, me and you, so like our generation of being dads, because you're a dad, I'm a dad, it's our generation of being a dad. I think you and I are part of this group and this club that I think we raise our hands and like, hey, not on my watch. This is gonna be different. This is gonna be quite a bit
Mm,
different, and I'm not sure what that's gonna look like just yet. But I'm gonna figure that one out, right? And I think for our generation of fathers, so the guys that raised you and I think they really did the best they could with what they had. I think that they were just there. There was some confusion of like, I know for a fact my role is to provide. Like that much I know. Like I'm going to
mhm,
provide financially for my family, put food on the table, roof over my kid's head, and that's what I know for a fact I need to do. Beyond that,
mhm,
it's a little blurry and hazy for me. I'm not exactly sure what level I step in here. What do I do with these big emotions? How do I teach life lessons? Like all these different things. And I think they did the best they could with what they had. And I think if they had the opportunity to do it over again, they'd probably do a few things different. But I think that's one thing that makes me sleep a little bit better at night as well is that I honestly think my dad still to this day is trying to do the best he can with what he has.
mhm.
And he does a fine job with it, but it doesn't come without, I think, a battle for him a little bit, just like for the rest of us. It's just a battle. So it's just sort of an interesting just observation, with kind of taking some of the emotion out of it. But um
Yeah, I
I
think
want
you're
to
right.
go ahead if you want to if you want to share anything
And
on
for
that.
me, that brings up the idea of, to what extent is the child responsible? Like, when does the child become more responsible for the relationship?
It's a good point.
That's what it makes me think about. It's like, maybe when you were younger, you didn't have as much of a say to say, like, hey, like, I'm not really happy with the relationship that we have. Um, so you have the phase of, okay, I'm a kid, not as responsible. And then maybe you have this period where you're like, I'm angry and I don't want to talk to you about it. And then moving past that into a period of grace and realizing you did do the best that you could. And I forgive you for all that you did and did not do. And I just want to, do what we can with what we have now.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you a Ted Lasso fan?
Oh my God, I love Ted Lasso. I have a
Oh yeah.
Believe in my home office. I have a
Yes.
Believe framed photo.
I love it, man. I love
Yeah.
it.
I'm
So
assuming
this
you love it.
oh, I do. Like I fought watching Ted Lasso for a while, and it wasn't because I didn't know any. I just didn't know anything about the show. I was like, okay, like I'm not really sure why people are such raving fans of this show. Like I like Jason Sudeikis, he's pretty cool, but like,
Hmm.
and then I had a coach of mine who works for me. He's like, Larry, there's two types of people in the world. There's those who love Ted Lasso and those who haven't seen Ted Lasso. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll figure it out then. But there's this part, right, where one of the characters, Jamie Tart, and he's one of the best soccer players on the Richmond team, right? And he's
Yeah.
got this horrible relationship with his dad. His dad's
Yeah.
super abusive, right? Just tears him down.
Yeah.
And he's having this conversation with the director of operations, Leslie Higgins, who he just like started talking to him about like, hey, can you get my dad a ticket? He's coming to the game. And so then they start having this conversation about dads. And Jamie asks Leslie, he's like, what's a relationship you have with your own dad? And just Leslie Higgins, the director of football, like he's got like these awesome, like just sort of like one-liner drops that he puts in,
Right.
and you're just like, oh my God, that's brilliant. Like, right.
Just a
Like,
fantastic minor character.
yeah, he's such a minor character, but some of the things he says, you're like, that is show-stoppingly really, really brilliant, right? And one of the things he says is, I used to be mad at my dad for a long time, but I've learned to love him for who he is and forgive him for what he's not. And I'm like,
Mm,
it's just that one line. I'm like, oh my God. And there it is right there.
right.
Right. And not only can we do that with our generation, like forgive our dads, but I think there's a part of us too that we're going to be hoping that our kids show us the same grace because we know that we're not perfect either.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, this the standard keeps on changing, right? Every generation. Because your dad, my dad, like, hey, we did it. Like we provided, we were there, like we didn't savagely beat our children. There's a different standard. And now the standard is, you need to be emotionally present for your children. And it's just gonna keep changing and can't hold them to the standards of, the newer generations. But
Right.
yeah.
I'm curious I want to get to what you're doing in fitness. So
Mm,
it's interesting with yoga. Um, the thing the story I'm telling myself is you probably have right out of the gate, right? You are a yoga practitioner. There's probably some pretty deep stereotypes to battle with that one. Because I know, like
Mm,
for me, this is just like so. Like
just say it. Just say it.
I live in the Midwest, so it's just like if you're
I'm
not
from
if you
Cleveland. Where do you
okay,
live?
I live in St. Louis, so
Okay.
but yeah, it's
Yeah,
like
they're
if you're not
they're all the
lifting the
same, right?
weights right or in the CrossFit, like you're whatever. And
Yeah.
but I've done yoga. I've even done hot yoga.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, wow, this is hard, right?
Yeah.
And I actually I do love yoga. There's a lot of things. I don't practice it very often, but when I do, I'm like I get a lot out of it. But the
Hmm.
hardest thing for me, I'll never forget like showing up to a yoga studio with one of my friends he's a guy I work out with, and we were like, maybe we should do some yoga like to help our
Hmm.
mobility because we just suck at mobility. And I remember us pulling up to this yoga studio and being like, do you think anyone's going to see us going in there? Like, you know what I mean? But I think there's this stereotypical block, for I think it's becoming better, but like where guys
Yeah.
just, it's hard for us to do yoga, I think sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, no, the reality is, and especially, 10 years ago, when I first started yoga, the scene was a lot different. If you
Yeah.
go into a yoga studio now, especially in like, I live in Austin, Texas now. If you go to a yoga studio here in Austin, or you go in bigger cities, there's going to be men in there. Like it's not just women and like one dude. It's women and men. But, you know, 12 years ago, 10 plus years ago, it was dominated. It still is dominated by women, but it was way more dominated by women. And so, there is so I had that same block. I did my yoga class. My first yoga class was on accident. I didn't consciously plan on going to a yoga class. I was running an errand. I was going to go to the gym afterwards, and I stumbled into a yoga studio and they were going to have a class. And I was like, I've actually wanted to try this for a while, so I'm just going to do it. And that first class for me was just so challenging, and that, for me at the time I was a college athlete, recognizing that weaknesses were areas of opportunity just intuitively. I thought, wow, what if I kept doing this? Like, what if I stuck with this for a month and did it every day? And the results spoke for themselves. Like my flexibility skyrocketed. My joints felt a lot better. I would describe it as more fluid and stronger, but also lighter at the same time. So I just felt stronger and more in control of my body. Um, my core strength went up. I had great balance. I could do all these things that I couldn't do before. Um, but yeah, there definitely is like the perception that yoga is this very feminine activity, and that if you do yoga, then that means that you're a really feminine guy. Um, and yeah, so I mean that exists. Um, but if you just recognize instead that, oh, this is working on my weaknesses and it's going to help me be better in the gym, like I'm going to lift more weight, I'm going to feel better doing it. I'm not going to be as sore the day afterwards because I'm actually working on my hip strength and my core strength and my flexibility, all these things that I'm not working on. Like I think guys just assume that they're supposed to have knee pain and back pain when they work out, or shoulder pain. You're like, yeah, I work out and I have shoulder pain. Like, well, no, you're not supposed to have shoulder pain. There's something wrong there that you need to fix. Like you need to work on your flexibility there, or you need to work on your hip flexibility. You need to work on your posture. Like you're building on top of a poor foundation, and doing a fitness centric yoga program is going to make your foundation stronger. You'll get better at everything else as a result. And you'll be able to keep working out. I think a lot of people get to like their 50s and they're like, oh, yeah, I just don't lift weights anymore because it hurts. And then my response to that is like, well, yeah, it probably hurts because you're doing it wrong. You've been doing it wrong for 20 years and your body is finally saying, we can't do that anymore, dude. Like, that's not how the shoulders work. So when you work on all these, aspects of your core strength, your mobility, your flexibility, suddenly your body's able to tolerate things that it couldn't before because you're working on those weaknesses that cause dysfunction and improper movement patterns.
So like this has been something that has been incredibly like a foundational preventative piece for you, or like I would say even functional piece for you.
Yeah, I mean, yoga serves as the foundation for me. And instead of thinking about it like a flowing one exercise to the next, think about it as a series of isometric strengthening postures,
Oh
right? So
yeah.
think about
Okay.
planks, think about
Yeah.
holding a squat, think about building, right, this concept of muscle activation, building muscle awareness in your glutes and your hip flexors and your transverse abdominis and all these areas that you don't really get to focus on because you're moving too quickly in weight training. um, so yeah, like all this stuff that I do just makes me so much better at weightlifting, and I feel good too. Like I don't get pain like other people do, which
I think
is like
that's
amazing.
yeah, it's one of the most important. I mean, pain free. Like if you're dealing with chronic pain, like I was telling my wife this that last year I had a horrible knee injury, and
Mm.
up to that point, like I had never dealt with chronic pain. And the kind of funny thing is that I spent 18 years in medical device sales, and about 10 years of that was dealing with patients in chronic pain. And I
Huh.
never really understood like how taxing chronic pain is. And so like until I injured my knee about a year ago, and I was
It's
in chronic pain.
tiring.
Oh my God. It's like I was telling my wife, I was like, I have a whole new respect for people that deal with chronic pain because it's like it's the first thing you think about when you wake up because you feel it.
Hmm.
It's the last thing you think about before you go to bed because you feel it. And you literally feel like this hum of stress, depending on how bad the pain is, all day long. Like it's
Yeah,
literally just there present all day long.
it's a
And
drain on your energy.
well,
Like
it's
just
a
imagine how much energy you have and take away like 30%.
right. I mean, the thing is that you're taxing the sympathetic nervous system. Like if you're in constant pain, you're triggering fight, flight, or freeze, because it's
Hmm.
triggering versus that parasympathetic nervous system, which I'm sure, which you activate in yoga, right? Because
Hmm.
you're doing the deep diaphragm breathing, which activates that rest and digest.
Hmm.
And I'll tell you, man, I work more on my mobility now that I'm healed than I ever have before because I'm like, I am not going through that again. It's
Yeah.
horrible. Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're totally right. Yeah, I mean, chronic pain, so draining. So I'm curious for you, like when you were going through that knee pain, what were your like, what were your solutions? Like, or what did you think of as solutions?
So my injury was a little pretty bad. So I ruptured a membrane in my knee, and my knee was bleeding out internally. Like it just
Oh my
kept
gosh,
bleeding. Oh, it was horrible. Like I thought it
what
was
happened?
swelling. Well, so I was doing it was dumb. It was so dumb. So like me and my oldest son, we were in the gym and we were working with a trainer, and this guy had us doing burpee cleans. Burpee cleans. So I had a
Burpee
100-pound
cleans.
barbell and I'm going down, holding onto the barbell, doing a burpee. And then as I come up, I flip the 100 pounds up and I do a clean. And so like my knees were going
Okay.
over the bar in a very bent position. And I think what happened was is I just went too far, right? And that has to do with also my mobility and flexibility, and it wasn't great. And
Hmm.
I popped, and I ruptured this membrane. It just bled, and it bled like a stuck pig in my knee joint for 3 straight months. And then finally, I had to go get surgery, get it
Wow.
taken care of. I didn't know how bad it was until I started to get my knee drained after months, and I'm like, oh my god, this is really bad. But now, I'm much more like I stretch every day. I warm up, I cool down, I stretch out my hips, my low back, my glutes, my calves, my hamstrings, my quads. Like I'm really, really particular, in my core, lower back. And I'll tell you, and I don't have any pain anymore.
Hmm.
But I always tell my
Nice.
kids, they're like, why do you stretch it? Like those, they're younger and they'll be like, why do you stretch? I was like, 'cause if I don't, bad things happen. If I don't. And you should
There's
too.
a There's a great Otto von Bismarck quote, who's Prussian emperor, 19th century. He said, I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said it's really easy to learn from other people's mistakes. Or no, sorry, it's really easy to learn from your own mistakes. It is much more of a challenge to learn from other people's mistakes. So, you're either the guy who hasn't had something significant happen enough yet, where you're starting to work on those aspects of fitness, or you have, and you're like, holy crap, I don't want to do this again.
Right. Yeah,
So,
it's not fun.
sooner or later, you're probably going to need to do something like this if you want your body to keep functioning to some extent.
Yeah, no kidding. So which I want to get to, as we wrap up here today, how does your system work for people as far as like what do you do? How do you teach people? If even if people are just, I'm sure you deal with a variety of people who are like nuts
Mhm.
about yoga and they do it, and then some people are just like, I'm kind of new to this. Like, so what do I do? And everything in between.
Yeah, I mean, so we really focus on the guys who are new to yoga, and even the guys who aren't new to yoga who come into our system, they're like, "Whoa, this isn't like the yoga that I've done in the past." So there's a few things that I've really developed in my teaching style and my approach that makes it different. It's the reason why I have 500,000 subscribers on YouTube and I've published multiple books because it is a different system. So first thing for men is that there's not as much flexibility required. We do poses that are, more appropriate for typical male levels of flexibility. We also focus more on strength. So there's a lot more focus on isometric strengthening. There's a much more focus on muscle activation, which not only leads to increased mobility, but it also leads to more strength. There's more focus on active mobility versus passive stretching. So if I were to, I could reach my arm overhead, right? And I could do, and holding with just the strength of my body, I can do active mobility, or I could use one arm to pull the other arm. That's passive flexibility. If you work more on active mobility, it it leads into more direct results with in terms of functional strength, but also in terms of greater increased overall flexibility. Um, those are, and then also we focus on men's fitness goals, right? So I think a lot of, without being too unpopular in 2024, men and women have different fitness goals. Um, a lot of yoga classes are more hips and core focused. So I like my yoga workouts to focus on my fitness goals. So we do a lot more upper body. Yes, we still work on hips and core, but we do a lot more upper body. And then the last big difference is that we don't incorporate the spiritual elements because I'm there because I want to work out. I can still get the benefits of breathing and mindfulness without without borrowing spiritual philosophies or principles from Ayurveda or from yoga philosophy. Like you can still get the benefits of yoga without inserting in those aspects because really that comes down to the breath and the body awareness. I just want to be able to focus on the proper technique rather than the spiritual guidance. So, and some people like that and some people don't. So that's up to you to decide. But so those are the five big differences that we put into the workouts. And yeah, once you come in, you just follow along to a workout on your screen. You do the best you can. You don't feel bad about what you could or you could not do. You just say, okay, cool. I'll do it again tomorrow and I'll do my best based on how I'm feeling. And then what happens is within a month, people usually say, like, most of my pain is gone. Like 80% of my pain is gone. For some people, it's gone entirely. For some people, it takes like 2 weeks and they're like, yeah, I don't feel pain anymore. And these are people who have had pain for years, decades, who sat at chairs, who haven't worked out. So it doesn't take long to work. And what's cool about that is it encourages you to keep going. It's not like you have to wait to see results in the mirror. You're like, oh, I feel it. Like I feel so much better. And I feel the difference when I don't do this workout. So that's enough motivation for people to keep going.
I love the fact that you put the strength into this and sort of take the spirituality out, because like I'm a spiritual person.
Hmm.
It sounds really weird, but I don't want that intertwined in my work.
Yeah, no,
I just
it
want
was
to work hard.
confusing.
Yeah.
Like, did you have an, were you, did you grow up playing sports?
Oh yeah. Well, well, let's I tried. I liked it. I was not the greatest athlete
Yeah. But
growing
for
up.
me, like that experience was weird going from like working out as athletic and like, and then going into a yoga studio, like, oh, it's spiritual. I'm like, no, it's athletic. It's workout. What's going on
Yeah.
here? I'm confused, which is fine if that's like if that's your experience and that's how you want to do it, great. But for me, I was like, I want to do this a bit more fitness focused.
So talk to me, like, because I'm curious about this for myself, because like, I want to I want to continue voiding off like knee pain, right?
Mm,
And I'm gonna be 50 next year, and I mean, I feel like I'm in decent shape. Like I mean, I've been training for over 30 years, and like I'm 180 pounds and sub 10% body fat, and like I'm getting ready for my first half marathon. So like,
mhm.
I train every day. I try to get in 10 to 15,000 steps minimum per day, along with weight
Right.
training, along with stretching. But like for me, I don't know how you operate. And I would love for you to just talk to me as if like, hey, if you want to work with me or if you want my resources or do yoga in some way, shape, or
Mhm.
form, this is where you start. This is what you do. So what would you tell me?
So for you, since you're new, what I would do is, so you sign up, you get access to our app or our website, and then from there, you start with a program progression that's going to guide you from one beginner program to the next, up through intermediate and beyond. So the good thing about our programs is that they're all full body. There's one that's shoulder focused and is only upper body, but most of them are full body. And so what you'll find with knees in particular is that it's not just, and this is the same case with every different part of your body. It's not just one part of your body that's causing the pain there. So like your knees, for example, that's related to ankle strength or stability, ankle mobility, hip strength, and core strength. So all of those things impact the function of your knees. So when you start working on those things, it supports the muscles and the joints that work with the knees. That takes the pressure out of the knee joints themselves and puts them into the muscles instead. So working on that is going to help with getting rid of knee pain, but it's also going to help with strengthening, preventing some of the causes of knee pain. So, and the important thing isn't that people say a lot like, well, what's the best program? And it's not so much what is the best program for you in this particular moment, because I also, like you can message me, like I'm here, I'm available, but you know, a lot of people don't message me just because, I have limited bandwidth and I have tons of people who are working with us. And the important thing isn't that you are doing the best program for you. It's just that you're just doing it consistently. So if you can do this stuff 3 times per week, you're going to notice it within your first month. So that's the most important part, not necessarily doing the exact program for you, um, but just being consistent and doing your best you can on that day.
Got it. And then how do I like where do you direct people to as far as like where to get started?
Our website, manfulyoga.com. And yeah, that's where that all happens.
Awesome, man. How many people have you helped over the years?
A lot. I could we've the number changes a lot. I think right now we're at 100 and maybe 150,000, 175,000. You consider, all the books and the DVDs that I've sold, all the people who have come in through our website and our members area. I don't include the YouTube channel in that because we've had 30, I don't know, almost 40 million views on YouTube over time. I'm more so focusing on who has actually bought a program from me and used it. So, but yeah, this approach seems to be something that other men are looking for. And it's been really cool to be able to develop the community that goes with that.
That is really cool, man. How long you been doing this for?
Started the YouTube channel in 2012.
Wow. And how many subscribers?
We just hit 500,000 subscribers on YouTube
Wow.
last week.
Congratulations, man. That's so cool. Good for you.
Thank
And
you.
that's 12 years going. That's amazing.
Yeah, so
Uh,
all you need to do is run a YouTube channel for 12 years and you too can also have 500.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
man. That's great.
Thank
Um,
you.
Very cool stuff. Well, I want to make sure that the guys can find you. I know over at Manflow Yoga, they can get started over there. There's actually a button, guys, where it just says get started today. Super easy, right?
Hmm.
But I'd love two questions for you. Number one, um, what would you say is one piece of parting advice you'd give as being a dad? And then what is one piece of parting advice you'd give as being a husband?
Ooh. All right, just one. I'm gonna have to do what I feel in the moment here. One piece of parting advice I would give to being a dad is to imagine your children as your younger self and give them what you would have wanted.
I like that.
Not necessarily what you know, the toy that they're screaming at you for, but what is the emotional recognition and validation that you would have
Yeah.
wanted.
Yeah.
Um, as a husband, I think open expression of your feelings, your thoughts, um, because when you're not doing that, actually, I'm unlike, I looked up stats on this, but like I got a tattoo a few months ago, first tattoo at 30. 4 years old. It's like fewer than like 5% of people who get tattoos get them when they're older, and their first one. And for me, this is important because it means courageous authenticity. And for me, with my relationship and my wife, that means expressing myself. Because the more that I express myself, even when I'm scared of it, the closer that we become. When I express myself, that means I'm not holding things in. I'm not creating contempt. I'm not breeding resentment. I am connecting with her, and I've learned that she can handle it. So for me, expressing the things that I'm feeling to my wife.
Love it, man. Love it. Well, guys, we're gonna have all the links in the show. Oh, by the way, social media. Where can guys follow you? Is it Manflow Yoga or is it just your name?
At Manflow Yoga for everything.
Got it. Okay, that makes it super easy at
Mhm.
Manflow Yoga. So, all right, guys, we're gonna have all the links in the show notes for you, so not to worry if you want to connect
Mhm.
with Dean and
Do
all
they
of his.
uh do they
What's
want
that?
a code? Should I throw in a code here?
Oh, if you want to, I mean, that would be amazing if you don't mind. Like, what will the code do for them?
It would give them, I think, $30 savings on a membership if they want
Oh,
to
wow,
try that
that's
out.
really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
What code do you want to give these guys?
Uh, Make it simple. I'll just do a dad edge.
Dad Edge, all one word. Okay, cool. Well, guys, hey, well, Dean, thank you. That's really, really kind of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure. Guys, go check out Dean's stuff. Use that code Dad Edge upon checkout. And you'll get a discount. You get $30 off of his membership if you want to check out his yoga resources and what he's doing. And I encourage you guys to go check him out because, like I said, like I'm looking at some of the photos that Dean's got on his website, and he is not your average yoga guy. Like this guy does do this stuff for strength. You can tell just aesthetically what this guy looks like. So very good
Yeah.
stuff.
And I'm
Um,
also weight training. It's not just yoga. So
nice.
I love using both. And yeah, thank you though. I appreciate that.
I'm curious. Like, how tall are you, and how much do you weigh?
I'm 5'10", and right now I'm 172 pounds.
Okay, dude, you look jacked, man. Like you're
Thank you.
yeah,
Yeah.
like
If
that.
I didn't eat
That's
as much food as I did and work out, I'd probably be 145 pounds. So
really.
it's yeah, but yeah, it takes some effort. But thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you bet. You bet. Guys, head on over to the dadedge.com/Friday 175. It's almost Dean's weight, right? So the dadedge.com/Friday 175 for the show. I'll have all the links in the show notes for you. I also have the coupon code in there for you too. Thank Dean for this. I didn't ask him for this. He just offered it up. So I was really, really kind to him. So Dean, thank you so much for doing this, brother. I appreciate you.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions. Very
You
good
bet.
questions. I'm glad we actually got to have a conversation about all of this stuff that's much more important when it comes to being a dad, being a husband than just working out. So that was cool.
Me too. Me too. Gents, enjoyed today's podcast. Go out and live legendary. Take care.